Now in the last video, we learned how to retrieve all the categories from EF Core and display them. In this video, what I want to show you is how you can create a new category or edit any of the existing categories. So for that, first thing we have to write our action methods for that. We will do that in a single action method and I'll call this absurd. So we have public iActionResult. Let me call that as absurd. It is a combination of update and insert. And here we'll have a nullable ID. If we are creating a category, we will not retrieve any ID, but if we are updating, we will retrieve an ID here. First thing we'll do here is we'll have a category object. Let's call it obj is equal to new category. On that object, we have to check first. Next, we have to check if the ID here is null or not. If this is null, that means we will be creating. So when we are creating, we don't have to populate anything. We'll just return back to the view the object empty as it is, because user will fill in the details and hit the submit button. Else this will be for edit. That means ID is not null. So we need to retrieve the object of category from database and pass it to the view so we can display user what are the current values for this object. How do we retrieve that specific category from the database? For that we can say obj is equal to, we have to deal with database, so we'll use the DB context object underscore DB, and on what model we are playing this, it's the categories. When we were retrieving the complete list, we used .toList, but we only want one object. So we can use .first here, and here it expects an iQueryable. On what criteria we want to filter? We want to filter using the lambda expression u goes to u.categoryID. That category ID should be equal to ID. What that will do is it will check for categories where the ID matches the ID that we have here, and it will retrieve the first object. So if this condition retrieves more than one object, first we'll make sure that it fetches the topmost record. Obviously it will never retrieve more than one because ID is the primary key. Once it retrieves that, we can return back to the view and we can pass the object that we retrieved from the database. As a safety check, you can also check here if obj is equal to null, we will return not found. That being said, let me try to execute this and see how this works. Inside our index view, what we did was when someone clicks on the edit button, it takes you to the absurd action method that we created with an ID, and in here we are passing the ASP route ID as category ID. So the category ID will be passed with the edit method and we are using that to load the object. Now we need to put the view for our absurd. So right here, we'll right click, add view. We'll go with the razor view and not the empty view. Let's add this and we'll switch back to our assets. Here we have the category absurd. Let me copy this and we'll paste it right here. All we are doing here is we're displaying create category or edit category based on if category ID is 0 or not. Then we scroll down, we are displaying the name of the category, and if the category ID is not 0, we are displaying them update, else we are displaying them to create a new category. Let's run our application and see how this looks. As of now, what we did is inside category controller, we do not have the post action for absurd. So if we go to category, and if we try to create new, it will load an empty name. Perfect. Let's go back. If you try to edit, cat1 will be loaded. And you see right here, we have 1. Now I want to show you what happens if you type a number that does not exist. You'll hit an exception. The exception says that sequence contains no element. How can you avoid this exception? Of course, you can handle this if you want to, but in order to avoid throwing an exception like this, you can use first or default rather than first. What that will do is it will make sure that if the filter here does not retrieve any record, it does not throw an exception, it just assigns obj a null value. Let's give that a try as well. So we go to category and we go to edit. Let me add a number that does not exist. Press enter. You see it says the page not found now because we have a check here and we are returning not found if obj is null. So make sure you're aware of both of them, first or default, and you use them based on your scenarios. That being said, as of now, we are loading the categories when we want to edit. We need to configure what happens when we hit the update button, or if we go to category, what happens when we hit the create button here. Let's do that in the next video.